Ana Pauli, whose real name was Ana Beatriz Pereira Alves, was a rising Brazilian influencer and content creator whose life ended in one of the most tragic and shocking ways imaginable. On January 23, 2025, she fell to her death from the 8th floor of the Mont Blanc Apart Hotel in Nova Iguacu, Brazil, while reportedly filming adult content. What should have been just another night of work turned into a mystery that has kept investigators, fans, and the media piecing together the events of her final hours. Her death was not only heartbreaking but also surrounded by confusion, unanswered questions, and conflicting stories that made it even more haunting. According to reports, Ana Pauli was at the hotel with at least 2 or 3 men who were with her to film explicit material. At some point during the night, after drinking alcohol and allegedly consuming drugs, the situation spiraled into something no one could have anticipated. Witnesses and those present gave police wildly different accounts of what actually happened, which immediately raised suspicions. Some said she fell accidentally while leaning or climbing over the balcony. Others hinted it was possible she was pushed, while another version suggested intoxication caused her to lose balance. The contradictions in statements left authorities with more questions than answers, and the Baixada Fluminense Homicide Division opened an in-depth investigation. Police quickly moved to gather every bit of evidence possible. Hotel CCTV cameras were seized for review. Her phone was taken for digital examination, and witnesses, including hotel staff, were interviewed to reconstruct the timeline. An autopsy and toxicology tests were ordered, aiming to determine whether drugs or alcohol directly contributed to her fall. Meanwhile, those last present with her admitted to being under the influence of substances, which cast even more doubt on their reliability as witnesses. While some news outlets suggested it might have been an accident, others hinted at darker possibilities, pointing to the inconsistencies in testimonies. As days passed, reports began to lean toward the theory that Ana Pauli's death was accidental. Some investigators suggested she may have slipped while attempting to climb or lean over the railing with no clear evidence of foul play, but even with that possibility, the lingering suspicion and unanswered questions continued to haunt the case. For her family, friends, and fans, the uncertainty only deepened their grief. Her boyfriend, Pedro Henrique, shared his devastation publicly, mourning the sudden loss of the woman he loved and calling for a complete and transparent investigation. His emotional tributes showed just how deeply Ana's passing affected those closest to her. Ana Pauli's funeral took place on January 25, 2025, at the Jardim de Mesquita Cemetery in Rio de Janeiro. Mourners gathered not only to say goodbye, but also to remember her as more than just the headlines that followed her death. She was a 27-year-old woman with dreams, ambitions, and a digital presence that had attracted thousands of followers. Her passing became a sobering reminder of how unpredictable and fragile life can be, especially in the world of influencers and adult content creators, where risks sometimes lurk behind the glamour. In the aftermath, her story has sparked wider discussions about safety, accountability, and the pressures of the online content industry. The tragic circumstances of her death highlight the reality that behind the camera, influencers are human too, vulnerable to accidents, risky environments, and the consequences of choices made under pressure. While investigators continue to finalize their conclusions, one truth remains certain: Ana Pauli's story will not be forgotten. Her name has now become a cautionary tale, a reminder that behind the allure of fame and content creation lies a very real human life, one that ended far too soon. Not all tragedies in the YouTube world arise from loneliness, mental struggles, or isolated dangers. Some unfold from ambition, high-risk gambles aimed at viral fame, where the price paid is irreversible. For Pedro Ruiz III, that price was his life. On June 26, 2017, 22-year-old Pedro set out to create what he hoped would be a viral sensation on his budding channel, Damn It Boy. His goal was simple yet dangerous: to achieve internet stardom through a stunt involving a .50 caliber Desert Eagle handgun, a thick hardcover encyclopedia, and his pregnant girlfriend Mona Lisa Perez holding the gun. Pedro dreamed of more than just fleeting fame. He wanted to be legendary. His mantra was one echoed by many desperate creators chasing internet recognition: I may fail, but if I fail, I want to die trying. Tragically, those words would come to define his final moments. The stunt itself was reckless and ill-conceived. Pedro believed the encyclopedia could stop a bullet from a .50 caliber Desert Eagle, one of the most powerful handgun rounds available. Despite Mona's persistent objections, lasting over a month, Pedro convinced her to go through with it. Mona was pregnant with their second child, clearly uneasy, but ultimately agreed after Pedro assured her the test was safe. Just hours before the attempt, Mona tweeted, "Me and Pedro are probably going to shoot one of the most dangerous videos ever." The stunt was carried out in front of nearly 30 onlookers, including their young daughter, just outside their home in Hallstatt, Minnesota. Pedro stood firmly holding the encyclopedia against his chest. Mona was only a foot away, the Desert Eagle in her hands. Pedro reassured her it would work, convincing her to proceed. Then Mona pulled the trigger. The bullet blasted through the encyclopedia and struck Pedro's chest, delivering a fatal wound. His final words, caught on camera mere moments before the shot, were a desperate plea. "Stop, babe, stop!" Mona's immediate reaction was panic. She called 911, sobbing uncontrollably, but it was too late. Pedro was pronounced dead at the scene. What followed was a legal and emotional ordeal. Mona was charged with second-degree manslaughter. Throughout the trial, it became clear this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment mistake, but a carefully planned stunt driven by ambition, desperation, and the pressure of internet fame. She eventually pleaded guilty, receiving a 180-day jail sentence, 10 years of probation, and a lifetime ban on owning firearms or profiting from the video. Her sentence was split, 90 days in jail, followed by house arrest for the remainder. Though lighter than some expected, Mona's sentence reflected the tragic complexity of the situation. She never intended to kill Pedro, but she was emotionally manipulated and pressured. Yet she still pulled the trigger. Pedro's death stands as a stark warning about the darker side of online fame, where the boundaries between content creation and real-life consequences blur fatally. His story isn't just about one catastrophic stunt. It reveals how far some will go to be noticed, to go viral, and to feel important in a world where attention is the ultimate currency. No number of views, subscribers, or likes could ever justify the price Pedro paid. The video of the fatal stunt remains sealed, never released or monetized legally. Yet the story persists, shared quietly on YouTube forums, debated in Reddit threads, whispered among creators. It has become a cautionary tale, not measured in clicks, but in the grave warning it carries. Pedro Ruiz III chased fame and paid the ultimate cost. His story is a haunting reminder. When the stakes are life itself, there are no second chances. It is the kind of story that makes you stop scrolling, rub your eyes, and think, wait, did that really just happen? Because the tragic death of 23-year-old Mexican beauty influencer Valeria Marquez was not just another headline, it was a horrifying moment that unfolded in real time on TikTok right in front of her followers, and it turned what should have been a normal evening of live stream content into something that looked more like a scene from a crime documentary. Valeria was young, vibrant, and building her career in beauty and fashion, running her salon Blossom the Beauty Lounge in Zapopan, Jalisco, while also creating online content that drew in thousands who admired her makeup skills and bubbly presence. On May 13th, 2025, she went live as usual, stuffed toy in hand, almost like a comfort prop. But viewers quickly noticed something was not right. Her nervous expressions, her uneasy glances, and her haunting words, something along the lines of, "They are coming," gave off the kind of tension that makes your stomach drop even if you are only watching through a screen. And then came the chilling interruption. A man reportedly disguised as a delivery worker with the promise of a gift arrived at the salon, walked inside, and in one of the most disturbing twists imaginable, asked, "Are you Valeria?" To which she replied, "Yes." Within moments, he pulled out a gun and fired at her, striking her in the chest and head, silencing her forever while the camera kept rolling. The live stream cut off only after someone believed to be a friend or employee picked up her phone and ended the broadcast. But by then, countless viewers had already witnessed a young woman's life violently cut short. What followed was a wave of grief and outrage across Mexico and beyond, because Valeria's killing was not just about an influencer. It was about a bigger, more terrifying issue. Femicide. Authorities quickly announced they were investigating her death under femicide protocols, given that Mexico has one of the highest rates of gender-based killings in the world, with nearly 10 women murdered every day, and Valeria's case, tragically, fit that grim statistic. Her salon, once a symbol of her ambition and independence, became a crime scene swarmed by investigators, forensic teams, and journalists, while her followers flooded social media with tributes, disbelief, and anger. The haunting detail that she seemed to know danger was near, that she almost predicted her fate live in front of her audience, made it all the more chilling, like a final, unintentional goodbye broadcast to the world. The investigation so far has raised more questions than answers. Who was the man who posed as a delivery worker? Why target Valeria, a young woman whose life seemed centered around beauty, business, and digital content? Was it a personal vendetta? A case of stalking, or something tied to the broader culture of violence in Jalisco, a region already infamous for cartel activity and high crime rates? While prosecutors dig into CCTV footage, interview her friends and family, and comb through her online presence, what remains certain is that Valeria's killing is not just another crime story. It is a reminder of how public lives can make women even more vulnerable, how fame in the age of social media can attract both admiration and deadly attention, and how tragedies like hers keep forcing Mexico to confront a crisis that refuses to go away. For her fans, it is heartbreaking to think that what started as a regular live stream meant to share beauty, positivity, and connection ended in violence that will never be forgotten, turning Valeria Marquez into yet another name on the devastating list of young women whose lives ended far too soon, leaving behind a legacy cut short and a live stream that no one ever expected to become her final moment. From the instant Greg Plitt appeared on camera, his intensity was undeniable. He wasn't simply a fitness personality. He embodied raw determination and relentless drive. A former Army Ranger and West Point graduate, Greg had leapt from over 1,000 planes during his military career, and he carried that same fearless, high-octane energy into his post-military life. When he entered the world of fitness, he wasn't content to just offer routines or motivational talk. He lived every word he preached. Greg wasn't about aesthetics or surface-level gains. He was about grit, pushing mental and physical boundaries, and challenging people to break through limitations. Launching his YouTube channel in 2009, Greg transformed it into a platform that felt less like a fitness vlog and more like a digital boot camp. His videos weren't passive how-tos, they were charged calls to action. With over 120 uploads, Greg's message was unwavering. Give more, train harder, stop making excuses. His delivery was intense, part motivational coach, part soldier on a mission. You've got more inside of you than you know, he'd shout. Stop selling yourself short. Every clip felt like he was speaking directly to you, daring you to do more, become your best self. To thousands, Greg became more than just an online trainer. He was a mentor, a leader, a relentless advocate for transformation through discomfort. He taught that pain wasn't a sign to quit. It was evidence that growth was happening. He believed progress demanded sacrifice, that chasing greatness meant embracing discomfort. And Greg didn't just encourage others to adopt this mindset. He modeled it in everything he did. But tragically, it was that same uncompromising pursuit of excellence that led to his untimely death. In January 2015, Greg was filming a promotional video for his fitness brand in Burbank, California. The concept? A cinematic, high-intensity sequence of him sprinting along active train tracks. The intent might have been to capture a powerful visual, Greg, full throttle, running with unwavering purpose. Some reports suggest he may have tried to outrun the train for dramatic effect. Others believe he miscalculated his position or the train's timing. Eyewitnesses said Greg wore all black and carried a camcorder as he ran. In a flash, the shoot turned into tragedy. A Metrolink commuter train struck him during filming. One observer who viewed surveillance footage of the incident said they saw Greg stumble right as the train approached. The train went by, they recalled. I saw him stumble over the tracks, and then that was it. It wasn't the first time Greg had filmed on train tracks. Previous videos featured stunts like push-ups between the rails. For him, danger may have been just another element to conquer, but this time it proved fatal. News of his death spread rapidly, shaking the fitness world and his devoted fan base. It was a devastating loss, and a stark reminder of how quickly risk can turn into tragedy. Greg Plitt lived with unrelenting fire, constantly in motion, always pushing past the edge. His words, his energy, and his lessons continue to inspire. Don't settle, he said. Don't quit. And thousands still echo those words. But in his final moments, Greg showed just how thin the line can be between extreme commitment and irreversible risk. His passing wasn't just tragic, it was a haunting reflection of how even the strongest can fall while chasing greatness. Sagar Tudu, a 22-year-old YouTuber from Berhampur, had a dream shared by countless young creators: to capture breathtaking videos, earn recognition, and maybe ride the wave of virality into stardom. On August 23, 2025, that dream collided with reality in a way nobody expected. Sagar, along with some friends, traveled to the majestic Duduma waterfall in Odisha's Koraput district to shoot reels and drone footage. Duduma isn't just another scenic backdrop, it's a massive 500-foot cascade, mesmerizing to watch but equally unforgiving. Despite warnings about rising water levels due to releases from the nearby Makun Dam, Sagar stepped onto a rock midstream, hoping to nail the perfect angle. At first, it looked bold, the kind of daring shot that racks up views, but in an instant, it became clear he had underestimated the raw power of nature. A sudden surge of water swept across, turning a reel into a real-life nightmare. The video of what happened next spread faster than wildfire, chilling, chaotic, and unforgettable. Sagar was caught off balance as the current dragged him, while friends shouted and desperately threw a rope in vain. Bystanders watched helplessly as the young influencer disappeared beneath the force of the waterfall, swallowed by currents no one could fight. What was supposed to be scenic content had now turned into haunting footage that left viewers stunned. The rescue mission began almost immediately with police, fire crews, ODRAF, and local volunteers combing the area using boats, divers, and even drones. But nature wasn't giving up its grip. Days of effort only turned up his filming bag with equipment and batteries, but no sign of Sagar himself. Heavy rains and treacherous currents slowed everything down, and though the search continued, by August 27th, the tragedy was already being spoken of in past tense. As with most viral tragedies, the internet responded in unpredictable ways. Some people mourned, empathizing with the pressures influencers faced to constantly up the ante for content, while others mocked, labeling him reckless and careless. The cruelty of memes and sarcastic comments poured in, overshadowing the grief of those who knew him personally. Yet beyond the noise, the story sparked a deeper conversation about how the chase for online validation often pushes young creators into dangerous territory, where one miscalculation can cost everything. Sagar wasn't some thrill junkie. He was a 22-year-old chasing a career path that millions dream of, but the waterfall didn't care about likes, followers, or ambitions. His disappearance became a stark reminder that no reel, no video, and no fleeting fame is worth risking your life. Duduma remains breathtaking, but it now carries the weight of a cautionary tale, a reel gone wrong that turned into a tragedy, etched into the timeline of influencer culture. In March 2014, a chilling video surfaced on the Whirlpool Hitman YouTube channel, opening with a quote that echoed with haunting clarity: "Live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever." At first, it seemed like another daring upload from a man who thrived on danger and chaos. But behind the screen was Jacob Koschel, a 28-year-old thrill-seeker from West Cornwall, England, whose deep fascination with risk would ultimately cost him his life. Jacob wasn't your typical adrenaline junkie. His channel was a unique blend of extreme sports footage and personal reflection. Fans watched him take on some of the most dangerous stunts imaginable: cave diving, cliff jumping, swimming through stormy seas. But the one constant was his obsession with whirlpools. These swirling, powerful vortices of water represented more than just natural hazards to Jacob. They were challenges, tests of will, and perhaps even symbolic spiritual forces pulling him toward the edge. On May 28, 2013, a particularly fierce whirlpool formed in Sanon Cove, a rugged coastal spot Jacob knew well. Unlike any whirlpool he had encountered before, this one was vast, violent, and almost alive in its intensity. Drawn like a moth to a flame, Jacob couldn't resist the temptation to face it head-on and to capture it on camera. He enlisted his friend, David Rain, to film the stunt. True to Jacob's eccentric style, he donned a rubber horse mask for the dive, a darkly humorous flourish that highlighted his desire not only to confront danger, but to turn it into a spectacle. As Jacob plunged into the swirling waters, David filmed from the safety of the rocky shore, initially cracking jokes but gradually growing more anxious. For half an hour, Jacob maneuvered through the deadly currents with a skill that was equal parts awe-inspiring and terrifying. At one point, he likened the whirlpool's pull to surfing a wave, joking, "It's really similar to surfing, just flowing with it." But David sensed the risk was escalating and urged Jacob to stop. "I reckon you got enough? You got enough footage?" he called out. Yet Jacob was relentless. Determined to get a shot from the heart of the vortex, he asked for a stick-mounted GoPro to film from inside the whirlpool itself. He dove once more, and this time he never resurfaced. Seconds dragged into minutes. Panic consumed David, who plunged into the water in desperate search. What he found was far from the fearless adventurer they all knew. Jacob's lifeless body, face down and caught in the whirlpool's merciless grip. The final video was later posted to the channel after Jacob's death. What was once a playful, inspiring mantra now felt like a chilling prophecy. It was no longer just words. It was a haunting reminder of a life spent dancing dangerously close to death. Jacob Koschel had built his existence on pushing limits, capturing every leap, dive, and near-fatal moment on camera. But in the end, it was the whirlpool that claimed him. His funeral was packed beyond capacity. The church overflowed with mourners, while others gathered outside, united not only in grief, but in celebration of a man who lived boldly and without apologies. To many, Jacob was more than a daredevil. He was a philosopher of risk, a man who sought meaning where others saw only danger. Ultimately, Jacob Koschel didn't just pursue adrenaline, he embodied it, immortalized forever in that final haunting dive into the swirling abyss. In late September 2024, the city of Tbilisi became the center of international attention after the tragic death of Russian influencer Irina Glazunova. At just 24 years old, she had been enjoying what should have been an ordinary night with a friend, filming a TikTok in First Republic Square. The video was meant to capture her singing along to the track For the Last Time by the Hunger Boys, moving backward as the camera rolled. What neither she nor her friend anticipated was that the seemingly harmless setting concealed a hidden danger, a knee-high barrier that bordered an open drop into a subway underpass. Distracted by filming, Irina stepped back, tripped over the small wall, and fell several meters headfirst into the underground passage. The injuries she sustained, including a fractured skull base and broken neck, proved fatal, and despite being taken to the hospital quickly, she passed away a few hours later. News of her death spread rapidly, amplified by the fact that the fall had been caught on camera. Viewers were shocked not only by the suddenness of the accident, but also by the conditions that allowed it to happen. How could a central square in a major capital city have such an obvious hazard left unaddressed? The answer lay in Tbilisi's infrastructure. The square, a remnant of Soviet-era urban design, still featured outdated structures, including the low parapet that had caused the fall. At just 30 centimeters high, it did little to serve as a protective barrier, and instead created the perfect scenario for a devastating accident. The public reaction was immediate and emotional. At the site of the fall, people gathered to place flowers and candles, transforming the location into a memorial. Online, users across platforms expressed grief and disbelief, sharing clips and stories that made Irina's final moments part of a global conversation. Many called for accountability, pointing out that her death could have been prevented with something as simple as a higher railing or clearer signage. City authorities, criticized for inaction, finally moved to install barriers around the dangerous drop. It was a reactive measure, but one that acknowledged in a painful way that a life had been lost to an avoidable design flaw. Beyond the infrastructure debate, Irina's death resonated because of who she was. She was not a reckless thrill-seeker chasing viral fame. She had recently graduated from the Russian Academy of National Economy and Public Administration, worked in public relations, and was admired for her humor, kindness, and advocacy for animal welfare. Her online presence was authentic, relatable, and human, qualities that allowed her to connect with followers on a personal level. That is why her final video struck such a chord. It captured not danger or risk-taking, but a simple, joyful moment interrupted by tragedy. It felt both random and deeply unfair, underscoring how fragile everyday life can be. In the weeks following her death, discussions expanded beyond the specifics of the accident. Commentators reflected on how modern habits like filming content in public spaces collide with environments that were never designed with these behaviors in mind. The risks of distraction, often minimized in daily life, took on new weight in Irina's story. Her death became more than just an isolated event. It was a cautionary tale about the intersection of technology, human attention, and urban planning. Today, Irina Glazunova's name remains linked to both a painful personal loss and a broader societal lesson. Her story reminds us that behind viral headlines and shocking videos are real lives with real futures cut short. It is a call to improve safety, to pay attention to how cities are designed, and to remember that even in the most ordinary moments, life is fragile. James Stobbe, known online as Stobe the Hobo, wasn't your average YouTube creator. While most YouTubers built their followings through vlogs, gaming, or lifestyle content, James carved a very different path, one that felt more like a chapter from a classic American novel than a modern internet channel. His videos chronicled his life as a 21st century vagabond, hopping freight trains across the country with little more than a camera, a backpack, and an adventurous spirit. There was something almost hypnotic about his content. Perched calmly on the edge of a moving boxcar, Stowe would speak to his viewers in a low, mellow tone, often mixing dry humor with genuine observations. He'd comment on the changing scenery, point out small towns with quirky charm, or reflect on the overlooked beauty of rusting rails and forgotten places. In one moment of quiet narration, he remarked, "We'll be crossing the Red River into North Dakota and Fargo, which looks a little more interesting." It was those simple observational moments that made his videos so compelling. But while the tone of his videos was often serene, the reality of his lifestyle was anything but safe. Train hopping is illegal, unpredictable, and extremely dangerous. That risk, however, was part of what drew James to it. He wasn't in it for views or internet fame. He was chasing something deeper: raw freedom, untouched solitude, and the romantic mystery of the open rails. His videos didn't just showcase travel, they captured a way of life that most people couldn't imagine, filmed from rail yards, abandoned tracks, and the backs of moving freight cars. Then came the tragic end to his journey. On November 8, 2017, James lost his life in what was officially labeled a train-related accident in Baltimore, Maryland. But even now, the full details remain unclear. Some reports claimed that his backpack got caught on a fast-moving Amtrak train while he was on a bridge, pulling him down. Others speculated he fell from an overpass. No single version of events was ever confirmed. The lack of clarity around his death only added to the somber and mysterious aura surrounding his final days. His fans were devastated. A fellow rail rider and close friend, known online as Spike, shared a heartbreaking tribute. "Jim and I go back many, many, many years," he said, his voice heavy with grief. "Last week, Jim was killed in a freak accident involving an Amtrak train. Today was the saddest day of my life." Just under 2 weeks later, on November 20th, James was laid to rest. But Stowe the Hobo was never just about thrill-seeking. He was a quiet philosopher of forgotten landscapes, someone who found grace and meaning in places most people overlook. His videos weren't stunts, they were reflections. He brought beauty to rusted rails, abandoned stations, and endless stretches of open sky. He lived on the edges of society, not for attention, but to prove there's still space to wander. In a strange and tragic way, the manner of his death felt like the final line of the story he'd been writing with every mile. James died doing what he loved, riding the rails, seeking freedom, documenting a life off the grid. He'll be remembered not just as a YouTuber, but as a modern-day poet of the rails, someone who truly lived in a way most never dare. Georgi Dzhanjanalitsa's story is one of those haunting reminders that sometimes chasing the perfect shot can come at an unimaginable cost. At just 23 years old, the Georgian-born fitness influencer had built a life many admired. He was energetic, ambitious, and had a growing online following of more than 100,000 people. His Instagram feed was full of workouts, motivation, and the kind of positivity that drew in fans from all over. Behind the inspirational posts and well-structured captions, there was also a young man who loved adventure, exploration, and pushing himself to new experiences. Unfortunately, one of those adventures would end in tragedy. On March 13th, 2024, Georgi was in Italy exploring Roghudi Vecchio, a deserted ghost village perched in the mountains of Calabria. The spot is famous among urban explorers for its eerie, crumbling buildings and haunting atmosphere. It was the perfect backdrop for dramatic content, but it was also a dangerous setting with unstable structures and precarious edges. While standing on an abandoned balcony without railings, Georgi slipped, lost his balance, and fell into a deep ravine below. Just like that, the life of an influencer known for strength and vitality was cut short. The rescue attempt was immediate but incredibly difficult. Firefighters from the Melito Porto Salvo unit, along with the SAF Speleo Alpino Fluviale team, rushed to the scene knowing every second mattered. Yet the ravine was so deep and rugged that even getting close to him required the assistance of a helicopter. After hours of effort, they were able to recover his body and transfer it to Salin Jonish before handing it over to local authorities. For those who had followed his journey online, the news hit like a shockwave. Here was a young man who seemed invincible in his workouts, always projecting power and positivity, suddenly gone in an instant because of one unlucky slip. His death was a stark contrast to the content he loved creating, videos and posts meant to inspire strength, motivation, and health. The impact on his loved ones and followers was immediate. Georgie's close friend and fellow influencer Chris Kogias, who had been traveling with him, confirmed the heartbreaking news with a simple but powerful message. "Zayn is no longer with us. Please pray with us for his soul to rest in peace." His girlfriend, Elena Margariti, shared a deeply emotional tribute on Instagram, describing him as the most beautiful person inside and out and promising, "We will meet again." The message captured the raw pain of losing someone so young, so vibrant, and so full of potential. There is a sobering lesson in his story. Social media often glamorizes risk-taking, adventure, and the pursuit of ever more breathtaking content. But the reality is that these moments can carry very real dangers. Georgie's death is not the first of its kind. There have been other influencers who lost their lives while chasing dramatic shots in risky locations. But his tragedy serves as yet another reminder of the thin line between adventure and danger. His passing leaves behind not only grief, but also reflection. To his fans, Georgie will be remembered for his drive, his optimism, and his dedication to fitness. To his loved ones, he will remain the cheerful, strong, and kind soul they knew off camera. And to the wider world, his story is a reminder that behind the perfect angles and captivating content are real people with fragile lives that can change in a split second. Georgi Zayn Janalitsa's life may have been tragically short, but his impact through his content, his friendships, and the message of positivity he carried remains strong. Not every YouTube journey is filled with excitement, adventure, or fame. Some begin with innocent dreams and end in unimaginable heartbreak. Such was the tragic case of Harley Dilly, a 13-year-old boy from Port Clinton, Ohio, who, like many kids his age, simply wanted to be a YouTuber. What started as a young boy sharing his world online ended in a community grieving a devastating loss. On August 20th, 2019, Harley launched his second YouTube channel, Harley Dilly 2.0. His videos were lighthearted and typical for a kid his age. Mobile gameplay of Madden NFL 20, the occasional vlog, and commentary filled with youthful enthusiasm. There were no flashy thumbnails or attention-grabbing stunts, just a boy excited to be part of the digital era. He wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing connection and fun, hoping his voice would be heard among millions. But just 4 months later, on December 20th, Harley left his house for school and never returned. He didn't show up to class. He didn't come home. And alarmingly, he wasn't reported missing until over 40 hours later. That delay raised immediate concern, not just among local authorities, but online communities who followed the unfolding story. Suspicion soon grew, particularly toward Harley's home life and family. Internet users began combing through Harley's content, and on platforms like Reddit, theories began to emerge. Some speculated his home life was troubled. Rumors suggested he was sometimes locked out of his house or left outside for long periods. A few users uncovered clips where Harley casually mentioned conflicts with his parents. In one clip, he described a heated moment with his mother. "My mom wanted me to go with her to get a friend, and I said I don't want to. I have work to do. I want to go home and stay." We argued for about 5 minutes. Then she snapped. Said she was going to call the police. Said she already did. While these statements didn't confirm abuse, they painted a picture of possible emotional strain and a lack of support. Meanwhile, Harley's disappearance triggered a massive effort. Volunteers searched daily. Police followed leads. Vigils were held. The town of Port Clinton rallied behind his name, hoping for his safe return. But as days turned to weeks, hope began to fade. Then, on January 13th, 2020, nearly a month after Harley vanished, the mystery came to a tragic conclusion. His body was discovered inside the chimney of a vacant house just across the street from his own home. Investigators believe Harley had climbed onto the roof and tried to enter the house through the chimney, possibly to escape the cold, hide after an argument, or find refuge. Tragically, he became stuck and died of asphyxiation. There was no sign he was filming at the time, and foul play was ruled out. But questions lingered. The strange and heartbreaking nature of his death shocked both the local community and the wider internet. Harley wasn't a controversial figure. He wasn't doing anything dangerous for views. He was just a boy with a dream, a phone, and a YouTube channel, trying to carve out a small place in the world. A local news anchor summarized the city's grief during a memorial broadcast. The city of Port Clinton continues to rally tonight for Harley Dilly, the teenager who got trapped and died in a chimney. Harley's story serves as a sobering reminder. Not every dream leads to success, and youth does not shield one from tragedy. He wanted to be seen, to be heard, And in the end, his story touched the world in the most painful of ways.